All right, everybody. We are live tonight with a very special guest, being Devon Eriksen, who is the author of Theft of Fire, which I have right here in my hand, book number 1 in the Orbital Space series. I'm super excited to talk with you tonight, Devon, because I know you've become a superstar recently here on the interwebs,
Well,
and
you
I really
flatter me
appreciate you
too
joining me
much.
tonight. How you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, pretty good. Yourself?
I am doing good. It's actually a little bit chilly down here in Florida tonight. Just got back from walking my two dogs and a little bit of a wind pickup, so it kind of chilled me a little bit. But in Florida, it gets hot like almost 90% of the day, so I really needed a little bit of a break, a little bit of a wind breeze. So I really like that. What about you? Is it pretty hot or chilly up there?
It's summer in the spring in the South is great. It's there's no real difference between the temperature inside and the temperature outside. So, before I moved to the South, I never understood this thing about porch sitting, but now I do. You want to be outside.
Now, once it gets below like 70 degrees down here in Florida, people put
Mm.
coats on, like winter
Mm.
jackets. So that's just a Floridian for you, though. But I'm seeing on the chat here, people are saying we're having an annoying echo. Do
Okay.
you
I think
do you
it's
hear an
I mean,
echo?
we don't hear it, but I think it's a Streamlabs specific issue. So we do have emergency headphones,
Yep.
which I
Let's
will deal with.
switch to the gear here.
Here we go. Christine to the rescue over here. Yeah, I don't hear the echo on my side, so that's strange.
Yeah. Okay, let me get this unplugged and this unplugged. Devin, let me know when you can hear something.
Well, I don't know if there's anything.
Hello.
It looks like he's talking. So let me go in here to
Good evening, everybody.
settings, Audio.
Thank you for joining. Technical problems, we're getting there, everybody. Thank you again for joining tonight.
Can you hear him?
Hello.
No, I cannot.
Okay. I'm gonna leave and come back. I feel like it doesn't like us changing things. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
Well, I am here tonight, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read you guys Theft of Fire, word for word, chapter by chapter. So if you guys are ready, let's get into it. Chapter 1, What the Cat Dragged In. I'm not going to do that. Oh, we got Devin back right here.
Okay. I won't be
What about now?
Hear anything he says.
We all good? Hello.
Okay.
I think we're good, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for Devin for joining in. We got past technical difficulties. Hopefully everyone can hear you just fine. So, starting things off real strong here, going into your book, because I want to take this interview in a few different directions. Number one is to focus on, of course, your book. The reason why I wanted to sit with you tonight and actually talk to you because I freaking loved Theft of Fire. I wrote an entire review on it. I talked about it a few times on the channel already. I had a blast with it. But the first question, I guess I have to go down this route. Are you a Harry Potter and Game of Thrones fan at all? Because I feel like I found a couple little Easter eggs in here.
Well, there's shout outs to quite a number of books, most of them being science fiction that inspired me. But I did want to acknowledge Rowling's contributions to making people read, even though I'm not personally really a Harry Potter fan. I'm a bit old, and it was a children's book when I was an adult, so I never really got into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, George Martin. I thought that it would be funny to talk about somebody having a political thing with dragons that he would never finish in the 22nd century.
And when I was reading through it, I was like, "Hold on, right here. I think this is Harry Potter that we're talking about." That was really funny. But going to your book again. I was telling people that in my review I had a really, really fun time, and that whenever I talk about it, I tell them that it felt like a movie when I was reading it. Like I could easily picture so many scenes just in my mind where Marcus and Miranda were doing these crazy things. And I'm looking for book number 2. So how is book number 2 coming along?
I'm about 52. We had a bit of a delay when I was writing, because the whole series is planned out. When I was writing book 2, and I realized book 2 was not going to fit in a book. So book 2 became 2 books.
Oh,
and
really?
Of course, you can't just slice a story in half and call it 2 stories. It has to have its own internal logic and arc and satisfying conclusion. So I had to do quite a bit of reworking, and that took me a little while. But we are now back on track, and about 52,000 words in. Maybe it's going to come in around 120, maybe 150. Not really sure of that yet, but everything's mapped out. So we are.
How many words was
moving
book
ahead.
1?
154, I think. So
Okay.
it's pretty hefty.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if book 2 is going to be quite as long, but probably about in the same ballpark.
Okay. Yeah, I think in terms of like chunk level, it wasn't too beefy to where it's like intimidating. Because I know some people, when they see these massive size books nowadays, they just like, I don't know. Especially when it's not an author that they know.
Yeah.
So
that was a bigger problem for publishers when I was still exploring the possibility of going through a publisher. You would have people look at the word count alone and not anything else before they had read it and say, cut 30,000 words. Well, no. Books should be long enough to reach the end.
Mm-hmm.
This is the era of ebook technology. We have print on demand. We have better book binding. We don't need to hit these word count targets that were designed for mass market paperbacks. The little ones that you used to see on the shelf in airports and such. They're going away. We don't need to target them anymore.
Yes. I'm not a fan of mass paperbacks. Like holding it in my hand, it feels so stiff. Like sometimes the actual physical feeling of the book should play a factor into pushing a book out there. And I don't think mass paperbacks are as much in style, at least in the community that I'm in right now. They are cheaper, of course. They're more accessible.
Well, people who care that much about the price and are also not attached to having a physical book have moved to ebooks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the people who are buying your so-called trade paperbacks, which is basically what you held up there, it's a little bit larger, a little bit better quality. These things are, these are the people who they really want a nice book and they don't care as much about saving $4.
Yeah. Now, I am a big ebook fan, and I actually wanted to get to the ebook of yours in a little bit, but first, I wanted to take it back to the story real quick in terms of Theft of Fire, because when I was reading through it, and I said this in my review as well, in terms of, to me, the biggest thing that stood out was the human element within the story, where you really focused on Marcus and Miranda, and just telling their story and just seeing their relationship grow over time. But I also like that we had a little bit of a sprinkle of alien technology in here. So, what inspired you to bring in this little tiny tidbits of alien tech? Was it to push innovation forward a little bit for the story, or what was the drive there for you?
Well, the whole thing started as a writing prompt on the internet. And it was a very simple prompt. It was, a princess kidnaps a pirate. And I thought that was funny. So I wrote something that eventually turned into the first scene. And I kind of needed something for them to go after. And I thought, okay, what's extremely valuable in a future society? Because as I was thinking about asteroid mining and stuff, you start to realize that one era's notion of value doesn't really translate too well to another era. there's a bit in the end of the book, without giving too much away, where he is loading a rifle and he's reflecting that frangible bullets are a little more complicated than your standard bullets, which are just a lump of gold. And that's on account of the asteroid mining. It's okay. Gold is now so cheap, they're making bullets out of it. And there's another part where he's talking about how they were drilling this asteroid and they kept coming across these fist-sized diamonds, and they'd have to chuck them out into space so they wouldn't ruin the drill. So, gold is cheap, fist-sized diamonds are cheap, materials are cheap because you're mining asteroids. So what is valuable? Well, technology is valuable. Secrets are valuable. Information is valuable. The more our technology stack grows, the more important knowledge becomes, as opposed to physical resources. So I kind of went down that road, and that actually formed the basis for the ongoing plot of the whole series. We're going to see a lot more about this past alien civilization and what this thing is and what it was supposed to do and what's going on with these now vanished aliens in the next 3 books. So questions will be answered there.
That's exciting, because I know book 1, it was just a little bit of a sprinkle of this alien tech.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens with that. But another element that I really enjoyed was the way that you brought in AI into this mix.
Oh, yeah.
In a lot of stories right now, AI is always put as the villain. AI is going to destroy humanity. AI is going to kill everybody. But in this
I
case,
realized there were basically 2 AI plots, and they've been done a lot. And almost all AI stories where an AI is a significant element of the story, rather than just the voice of the ship that tells you the shields are at 37%. It boils down to Terminator or Pinocchio. The AI either wants to destroy its creators or it wants to become a real boy. And I think that the likelihood of either of those things happening with real sentient artificial intelligence is vanishingly small. So I decided I'm going to write an artificial intelligence that is neither one of these things. And as I was thinking, okay, artificial intelligence doesn't want to be a human being. Well, how about we make this a coming of age arc. We go from wanting to be wanting to be human to comfortable in her own skin. And then we can, okay, how do we make the AI? Well, we look at what's going on with the humans. So this is an artificial intelligence that has memories of being a human, but is definitely very different in capability and in patterns of thought and so forth. And I sort of played with that idea, and that's how I came up with Leela.
No, I thought that was a great way to introduce AI, and in a way I haven't really read in a while, or probably ever, but something that it kind of reminded me a little bit of fantasy, because in some stories you have these creatures that are able to materialize out of nowhere. In your case, it's done through technology, where you have Layla materialize almost anywhere within the ship, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But
because everyone, at least in Orbital Space, has these implants that allow an integration between computer displays and their own visual field. Leela is able to use that to appear before them, and eventually, as she starts developing into her own capabilities, she shows increasingly increasing creativity with how she uses that. And I was thinking a lot about Looney Tunes as I was coming up with stuff for her to do.
And there's the way she grows on you, and I can definitely see maybe some Looney Tunes inspirations out of there.
Yeah.
But in terms of Marcus, I know he is a really kind of like a tough guy who has a history. He has a past.
Yeah.
He's a miner. He has dirt underneath his nails, and he's really technical. And I know I think in your personal life, you used to be an engineer.
Yes.
Was it like a mechanical engineer, or what type of engineer?
Software engineer.
Software engineer. Okay.
That was actually the latest of several careers, but it was definitely I've worked throughout my various careers with a lot of blue collar people, a lot of soldiers, etc., etc., and I wanted to break with this thing that fiction often does, where you have the smart guy and you have the tough guy, and those are like almost their entire characters in some stories. And the separation between the two isn't really something you see in real life. And also what you don't see in real life is people who boil down to one of those two things. So I wanted to create a character who was smart, tough, and competent. And at the same time, he had considerable personal flaws and blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of readers had fun figuring certain things out before Marcus did.
Also, I enjoyed how you kind of talked about it earlier in terms of your prompt, the way you describe the story.
Yes.
I thought that was hilarious. But in my mind, it was just like taking two people who don't like each other and just throwing them to a box and just seeing what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the book is about how people see each other and how that can transform over time. One review that I especially enjoyed likened it to locking two different top of the food chain predators with very different predatory styles in a small box, and they're either going to fight and rip each other apart, or they're going to have to find some way to not do that.
And I wanted to get to a little bit of the format of the book.
Yes.
In terms of first person POV, present tense. I know to me, I'm able to read through it just fine and experience the story, seeing it through his eyes and seeing it externally as well, and still have a really enjoyable time. But I know some people out there, there is just a block or some sort of constraint allowing them to get into it. When they see the word "I," they say, "You know what? No, it's not for me. Just put it down."
Yeah, well, they've been taught certain things about that. The moment that I decided that I was going to have to self-publish was when my sample chapters landed in front of an editor from a major publishing house at a science fiction convention we were both at. And he reads the first two sentences or so.
Mm-hmm.
And he holds it out to me like this,
as
if someone had handed him a dead spider. And he says, "Rewrite it in third person." And I'm not exaggerating too far with the tone of voice here. He really was that snooty. "You do know how to write in third person, don't you?" And I'm like, okay. So, I nod and smile my way through that conversation because that's how you talk to crazy people. But I realized that a lot of people working in the publishing industry really have no conception of the way that tense and point of view work. These are tools in an author's toolbox. You don't just choose them because you like one or you like the other, for the same reason that you don't try to pound nails with the handle of a screwdriver because the screwdriver is blue and you like blue. That's silly. This particular story had to be told in first person present tense for it to work properly, because it's about how people perceive each other. So if I speak from Marcus's point of view with the camera in his head, and he sees Miranda do something and he reacts a certain way to that, then what I am doing is I am telling you what happened. I am telling you who Marcus is by how he sees it. I am telling you who Miranda is by how she acts. And I'm doing all of that within the space of one sentence. And first person is the only way that you can do that. Because the third person, you can tell someone's thoughts in third person, but you can never really get that camera quite behind their eyes the way that you can with first person. And then the decision to use present tense was very simple, because this book is partially about people misunderstanding each other. So you can't have your first person narrator speaking with the benefit of hindsight. He has to be in the moment, seeing what he sees and believing what he believes at that moment. So, there's a certain number of people who say, oh, I'm really wary of first person because I've seen it done poorly by a lot of novice writers. And that's valid. Okay, give it a try. You'll see that I kind of know what I'm doing here. And there are some people who are allergic to it, and that's fine. Because when you write a book, when you write any story, the one thing you have to accept is if there's no one who hates it, there's going to be no one who likes it. Something that is designed to have no one hate it is elevator music. Nobody loves elevator music. It's just there, and it's designed to be inoffensive. So when you write a story, you have to decide what you're going to do. You have to do what you're going to do. You have to have some audience that, you're giving them something to love. But when you pick that audience, you're choosing, okay, I'm going to do something that this audience is going to love, but some percentage of other people are going to hate. The most common negative review I get is Marcus and Miranda are both jerks. That's kind of the point, at least to begin with. But, there are some people who can say, okay, this is a story about, some people learning to make different choices in their lives, and they can enjoy that. But there's other people who, I don't like this person right away, or I don't think this person is moral, and I can't read a story like that. Well, okay, go read another story. It doesn't have to be for everybody.
There's a lot of books out in the world for others to choose. If they don't like first-person POV, I mean, that's fine. Right? Yeah. I mean, not every book is for every single reader out there, but I know when you were coming into this, was Steps to Fire one of your original ideas in writing, or did you have a few other stories that you're writing and just playing around with and just getting your craft put together? Like, how did Steps to Fire in your writing success come about for you?
Well, I did a lot of nonfiction writing in various internet personas throughout the previous couple of decades. Basically, when I was doing software engineering, I would hold forth on the internet on various subjects. And nonfiction writing does teach you a lot about how to write fiction, because a lot of people, they don't necessarily realize what makes good writing. And one of the most important aspects of good writing, which you learn when you're trying to write to make a point, when you're trying to write to tell somebody something, when you're trying to write to explain something, especially, you realize very quickly that the most important aspect of writing is clarity. It has to be understandable. A
Mm.
lot of academic writers don't really get that. They write to impress. They write to say, oh, I'm going to throw in all this technical terminology. I'm never going to leave an equation out when I could put one in, because that's going to make me sound very smart to my 10 peers that are going to read this. No, the point of writing is to communicate to people who can actually benefit from your ideas. And they're not all going to be people who are educated just like you. So you have to be clear. You have to convey what you're trying to convey.
Mhm.
And any complexity that the reader experiences should be in the content, in what you're saying, in the story, not in the writing itself.
Yeah.
You're trying to make the words on the page as transparent as possible, so that ideally the reader forgets that they're reading words on a page and they're just picturing in their head what's going on. It's like you're giving them a script, and if you do it well enough, they make a movie.
That's exactly what I said earlier. Yeah. When I
Yeah.
tell people I want
Yeah.
to
So
read your book, feel like
I
a
had
movie.
done a lot of that, and I had dabbled in writing some short fiction, and I was sort of this guy who wrote good scenes, but I didn't quite have a formula for how I was going to turn that into novels. And then I eventually found some videos of a series of lectures given by a fantasy author named Brandon Sanderson when he was teaching at
Good
Brigham
author.
Young University. And he had a way of sort of laying out how he thought about stories that really sort of clicked with me. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I started writing. And I very rapidly discovered that no one can tell you how to write. They can only tell you how they write, because everyone's process is different. And becoming an author means finding the version of the writing process that works for you, that makes you able to create a story, that makes you able to structure it all and to keep going and to finish it. And so, people tend to scribble little things for years and be unable to do that. And then they'll figure out what works for them, and all of a sudden they're writing novels.
Going to your point about clarity real quick. I was talking with Sarah Korn a few weeks ago, and she's an editor, like really well known now because she's working with Ryan Cahill, who has these like massive books that she edits, and she's just becoming huge in the indie space for editing books. And when I was talking with her, I asked her a question in terms of like, what's the biggest or the number one thing that you recommend new aspiring indie authors to focus on? And she said clarity, because just getting the words across the page and exactly what you said, conveying what you're trying to tell in a clear, concise way. I think that's you hit the nail on the head on that one for sure. For clarity.
Yeah. You need to make it understandable. And then you can start to work with the language to say, okay, now how do I make it vivid?
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, now how do I fit the story into this language?
And when you're coming into this as an indie author, and you knew that you weren't going to go down the traditional publishing route, I'm sure you already had this in mind in terms of one of the biggest components in getting your book out there, of course, is having people aware of your book, even knowing that your book is out there, it's ready to purchase.
We call it discoverability.
So you're putting your book out there, marketing it, and I think you have a little bit of a smoking gun under you in terms of Christine being a super marketer out there, because she's one of the reasons as to why I even knew about the book. On was it 6 months ago now, 5 months ago, she reached out to me. I was like,
what she does is part of a strategy. And discoverability is really the biggest problem facing the book market today, and I say the book market because it's not just a problem facing authors, it's a problem facing readers. One of the very common pieces of feedback I get is, oh, I hadn't really read any fiction in years. I used to read fiction, but I kind of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that. In the late 20th century, the publishing industry, the function it served for authors was obviously to invest in them and fund these big offset print runs of books. But the function that publishing served for readers was that they were going to serve as a gatekeeper. And gatekeeping is actually a very important and necessary function in a lot of cases. You don't want to let just anybody into anything. There's a lot of people writing fiction who have no business writing fiction. They're terrible at it. They're not getting better. They need to go back to their day job. And the publishing industry used to filter these people out. So you could go to a bookstore and you could pick up a book, and it might not be to your taste, and it might not be brilliantly written, but you could be confident that if some publishing house had signed off on it, it was at least competently written, not a dumpster fire. And the publishing industry, for a lot of reasons that I can't go into because we don't have time, sort of got taken over by trustafarians who live in the same, 10-block area of Manhattan. And they weren't really interested in publishing what people want to read. They were more interested in publishing what they thought people should read. And so they began vetting for things other than writing skill. They began vetting for the message. And I think we all know what the message is, what the various components of the message are. And so TradPub, as I call it, was no longer serving this gatekeeping function.
Mm-hmm.
And books got worse and worse. And people gradually stopped reading. And, the TradPub types, these big five publishing houses, sort of moaned and wailed and tore their hair and said, nobody reads books anymore. And we have to lay off people, and we have to focus on books written by celebrities with big followings. But they never really looked in the mirror and said, are we the baddies? So this gave rise, this and Amazon giving us print on demand and a lot of neat stuff, gave rise to the surge in independent authors that we've seen today. It was people like Andy Weir who removed what used to be the stigma of being an indie author. And that's great. And there are some really, really, really brilliant independent guys out there now. But the problem was that there was no one serving this gatekeeping function. So there's also a lot of really, really, really terrible guys who, should just stop. And what's happening is that readers are being exposed to the raw slush pile.
Mm-hmm.
The slush pile being what used to be what came into publishing houses and they had to read through. Now the slush pile is on Amazon. So there's diamonds in there.
Yeah.
But as a reader, you have to dig. So discoverability is a critical problem. And I think whatever company comes up with a new paradigm for solving discoverability is going to do very well in the book business in the future. But, right now, each independent author has to solve discoverability in his own way.
Yeah.
And Twitter kind of the way we started to figure out how to use Twitter was what worked for us.
I want to get into that in a second, but first I want to make a comment on that in terms of gatekeeping in a sense of Amazon and being able to basically upload anything and
Yeah.
make it a book.
Yeah.
Like you can go on like tools nowadays, like Gemini or ChatGPT. They're giving the people the ability to enter in a prompt, pull out some sort of mess of words, and they string it together. You put it on Amazon, trying to make a quick buck. So I definitely understand that there's more and more books being loaded on to Amazon every single day.
Yeah, and it's not really the AI stuff that's the problem. It's the authors who just they aren't very good. You have a lot of people who they want to be an author. The drive is there, but the skill is not, and the talent is not. And no one really wants to be mean and say, oh, you suck. And you not only suck so much that like I need to tell you what to do differently. You actually suck so much that you should be doing something else. And that's a very harsh thing to say in an era of the internet where where it's very socially frowned upon to say harsh things. And we all want to have this uplifting message of anyone can live their dreams. And, I don't know how true that is or isn't. That would be a very deep sort of philosophical and scientific rabbit hole. But the fact is that there are a lot of people who do not belong as writers, and they are doing readers a real disservice. Because I feel like as an independent author, you have no boss. Everyone you work with works for you. You can hire them and fire them. I can hire and fire my editors. I can hire and fire my cover artists. I had to fire a cover artist. But you're answerable to no one except the readers.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some authors out there, and usually they're not selling very many books at all, who they don't have enough of a sense of responsibility to readers, and they don't have enough of a sense of responsibility that they must deliver a quality product to these people who are supposed to be paying the bills. And then, they sell $250 worth of books in a month. And they're scratching their heads and they say, my marketing needs to be better. Well, no, you need to take your responsibility to write a good book more seriously. You need to feel that you have an obligation to the people who pay your bills, or at least who would be paying your bills if you took your writing seriously.
Well, I think in your case, discoverability, I think it's working in your favor right now. Christine is leading that charge.
There's definitely a lot of opportunities right now in the indie market for the people who can really write and who take the time to really care about getting all the details right.
I think you had some pretty big names too. Read that to fire with John Carmack.
Yeah.
Gary Tan.
John Carmack was very kind in what he said about it.
So I think I asked Christine, how did you get this book in front of their eyes, or people outside the normal realm of Twitter? How did you reach these people with your book? Or is this an industry secret?
Well,
we're going to keep behind closed doors?
There are specific tricks that we use that I will not divulge, but I will speak about this in general. And the way to understand this is that you are building trust. Because, if you're charging $9, $10 for an ebook, that is not a big spend. It is really not. It is what you pay for parking if you go downtown in a major city. It's not a big deal. But people have a reluctance to buy books by authors they don't know.
Mhm.
That is not explained by that $10 ebook or that $20 trade paperback or that $30 hardback. Because what you are really asking for, the big ask, is not the money, it's the time. Reading a book takes effort.
Yeah.
It takes concentration. And it takes a lot of your time. It can take like 24 hours to read, one of these sort of thick science fiction novels. And that is a lot more of an ask than $20 because people were born with a certain amount of time and they're never going to get more of it. So they're making a decision whether they're going to spend it with you or not, whether their work in reading this book is going to be rewarding. And what you have to do in order to sell, in order to reach that audience, is find a way to build trust that the attention they give to you will be rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have to do is you have to build on this gradually. You get a little bit of attention, you get a little tiny bit of attention, and then you reward that, and you get those people to talk about it. And that gets you a little more attention. And then that has to be rewarding too. And then you have to spread it that way. So, our strategy is based on, okay, let's get people to pay attention, usually with a very small ask, and then get them, okay, did you like it? Can you say so to other people? And then this builds credibility. And I hear people on Twitter now talking about this amazing Devon Eriksen hype train. And that's great. But it's not all Christine. It's, she's helping to kind of roll the snowball, but the actual snowball rolling downhill is composed of all these people who have read and enjoyed my work.
Yeah. Like me. We got the cat over there?
Yeah. We have a cat, sort of. So, the first step is to write a good book. And the second step is to sort of snowball this building attention. Because, and that's something that not every author is good at. I talked about authors who don't sell because they're bad authors and they don't take their responsibility to the reader seriously. There's also another set of authors who sell just as poorly because they're absolutely brilliant authors and they have no idea how to make themselves discoverable. And every once in a while, you'll run into one of these people or you'll read their work and you're like, why is this person not an A-list bestseller? Because there are some amazing writers out there in the indie scene. And I'm hoping that I can be some small part of just helping to figure out how to navigate this so that we can sort of boost, so that writers who can really write know how to boost themselves, and so that we can boost each other. Yeah. Because TradPub is no longer doing that. A lot of the authors that TradPub has today who are really great, this is Brandon Sanderson and Larry Correia and these kinds of guys, they kind of came up before TradPub imploded. I mean, if you look at Brandon Sanderson, he's with Tor. And do you think Tor would sign him today if he were an unknown? I do not think so. I do not think so. If, White heterosexual family man Mormon Brandon Sanderson came along, they would say, this is not the voice that we need to elevate. They're not going to do anything to upset him now because he's making them huge amounts of money. But, I think there's a lot of authors who can't get into TradPub not because of what they write, because of who they are. So all of these, the next generation of Tolkiens and whatnot are not going to be found in TradPub. They're going to be found in the indie scene. And the trick is how do we make them stand out from the slush pile?
Yeah, what's a few indie authors that come to mind to you that you read recently that you're thinking, why aren't they an A-list author yet? Like, what's a couple names?
Well, I'm gonna put those on Twitter. I do a list periodically on Twitter,
Perfect.
like a reading list of, okay, these are the guys that I really recommend. But what I'm doing now, although there's one guy who goes by the name of Dr. Insensitive Jerk, who is,
I feel like I've seen that.
He's actually one of the people who is in competition with me as a finalist for the Prometheus Award. And I found his work very full of interesting ideas. And, he's been at this for a while now. And, even he thinks the prose in his first novel is pretty rough. And I would agree with that. But he has some real potential to develop into something really amazing. And, every once in a while, you'll run into these authors like this, or you'll run into people who aren't there yet. There's a couple of people that I am talking to, just that I met through Twitter, and they'll say, I kind of write some things sometimes, could you give this an eyeball and tell me if it's any good? And, I'll read this stuff and I'm like, damn, son. Okay, you need to fix this, and this. But, you have it. There are people who don't have it, and there are people who have it, and you have it. And so, there's a couple of guys I'm talking to right now, like, okay, write. Just get in there and write. And they'll write these Twitter posts like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm racking my brains and, I can't get this scene to work. And I'm like, bro, that's part of the process. Heinlein had days where he would just lie on the couch and be depressed and, it's over. I can never write anything again. That's part of the process. The despair is you just have days like that. But, I'm seeing some guys and they think of themselves as nobodies because they're like a bus driver in North Dakota or they're, a welder or something. And I'm like, no, bro, you can write. And, the guys who are getting these TradPub contracts, a lot of them can't. Have you seen, and I don't want to mention any specific names of anybody either way, but have you seen who's been winning the Hugo and Nebula Awards lately? I don't know, man.
Well, I can tell you that since I started this channel and started getting into indie fantasy and indie sci-fi, like some of these books just blow me away in terms of like just the quality, the story, the prose. Some of it has just been eye-opening, jaw-dropping. Even I think right here in the channel, this right here at the very beginning, I don't think she's still on, but she is. This is an example of an author who has it, at least in my opinion, had a story that was just exceptional. So I love the indie space. Like you were saying earlier, there are diamonds out there. We just gotta find them.
And when I sort of declined the question when you said, who are some of these? Because, I didn't want to be put on the spot there because it's discoverability is just as hard for me as it is for your average reader. I go on Amazon, I'm faced with the slush pile too.
Oh, yeah.
although one thing I have been, just things I enjoy, one writer who he's a little more trad pub and he's been in the business a while, who I particularly enjoy. And, he gets some shout outs in the book, is a fellow named Walter John Williams. And I think that he has never really had that A-list success because he keeps kind of switching genres. He just sort of jumps around into whatever interests him. But his science fiction is really good. Hardwired, Voice of the Whirlwind. So old cyberpunk stuff, but really, really tight and well crafted. I've also been enjoying 14 and the Fold by Peter Klein, who I feel is a relative unknown, but he did some interesting Lovecraftian stuff that I've been enjoying recently. Can we restrain the kittens a little bit, please? I think that we are in the kitten energy phase. Perhaps they can be put elsewhere or lured away.
I wanted to get to, I think, a recent development for you, or maybe I think it's still ongoing, which is the Kickstarter for the audio version.
Oh, yes.
Of
Yes,
Pet the
the audio,
right? How's that coming along?
Well, we are getting the promo video done, and so we should be ready to start that very soon. But the audiobook has been sort of an interesting challenge because obviously Audible is horrible and they control a large chunk of the market.
Yeah.
So the question of how do we figure out how there can be audiobooks of Orbital Space books for those who prefer the audiobook format. And, we've managed to come up with answers to most of those questions. But at first I kind of felt like, okay, some people like audiobooks. I'll do an audiobook. I'll figure out some way to make it happen so it can be there for these people. And then I started auditioning voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of them were terrible. Just like authors, a lot of people are not good at their jobs. But if you sort through the slush pile, and I listened to hundreds and hundreds of auditions for the voice of Miranda, and I found some people where I went from, okay, I'll do the project, to I am excited. I am excited. I actually managed to find, we are actually going to do, if the Kickstarter goes well, separate actors for each of the 3 major characters.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. And they are some amazing people. We've got some pros. We've got one guy, the voice of Marcus, and he sent in this audition that absolutely blew away all of the heavy resumes that were auditioning for this part. And turns out he's a bus driver in North Dakota. Like, what? And he did this audition, and my jaw dropped because he had a great voice for Marcus, but he also had this amazing clarity and diction. So we're getting some little voice samples of the actors on the promo video. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, people will get to hear my choices and understand why I'm so excited about this.
Now, I love when books have a full cast of unique
voices. Well, it was a good opportunity to do that because you've got this book in a very tight setting with 3 major characters, and that's almost it. So it was a very good opportunity to do something like full cast. And I'm going to be directing the whole thing myself. It's going to be about 17 hours. It's 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there is our estimate. And I'm hoping that because I'm not doing this Audible and Audible credit stuff, and they're not taking 80% of my earnings off the top. I'm hoping that, because Audible would list this at like $25, $30.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that we can do it for 18-ish as like a retail price.
That's exciting. I love audiobooks. It's just to me at least, it's an easy way to consume a book in a different format than just sitting on a couch and reading your Kindle, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have to drive a lot.
Oh yeah. Commutes. You can get some stories just crammed into your brain.
Like truck drivers, got long haul guys love their audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping to get into some of that market.
Well, I got one more question for you, and then I'm gonna leave the floor to you. And the last question is not really about your books. It's more about your avatar. Where does this cat avatar come from?
Oh, yes, the cat. Yes. Well, as you can see, I am not a cat. I am not a paid actor hired by a cat to appear human. I am indeed a human being. But where this came about was one of my fans. We joke around on Twitter. Yeah, that's one thing that's very important for marketing for any indie authors that may be watching. People really like to be able to talk to the authors of the books they enjoy. So, hang out with your fans on some sort of social media that helps that work. Because that is a big excitement builder to make people promote your book. So he looked at my avatar, which was, sort of a picture of my face, and he twiddled with it in an AI program a bit, and he created this cat. It kind of looks like me. It's got the beard and whatnot, and he posts this with the caption, "Devon Eriksen cat is not real. Devon Eriksen cat can't hurt you." And I thought this was so funny because he captured the facial expression and everything, that I changed my avatar to that picture. And then I posted this, sort of, I wish to get out in front, and, the rumors that I am a cat are categorically false. And so now we have all these people accusing me of being a cat. And I'll say things like, I am not a cat. I am a human being that wears containers on my feet and voluntarily stands under running water. So it's just this sort of running inside joke. And I have had people come up to me at cons and accuse me of being a cat. It's all good fun.
Oh, it definitely makes you stand out a little bit when I see. I think also it's a way for you to express some sort of emotion. Because whenever I see a nice, happy cat raising
Oh,
up,
yeah.
paws up, I'm like, okay,
The
something's
celebrating cat. When somebody says they're going to buy the book, I
Yes.
respond with
That's
these
always so funny.
pictures, AI pictures of cats celebrating, because I really do feel that way. I hope to become the kind of A-list author that can, light cigars with $100 bills. Assuming $100 bills are still worth something in the future. But, it's ultimately, everybody wants to get rich. But the fact that I chose writing is because there's this real gratification from somebody. You create something that just kind of comes from you. It just kind of comes out of your brain, and you spill it on a page and you hope it's good. And then somebody comes along and says, I really loved that. I want more. And that's the best feeling in the world. So, no matter how many books I sell, somebody comes on Twitter and says, oh, I bought it and I'm looking forward to it. Or I read it and I loved it. That's this little burst of just the best feeling in the world. And I don't think I will ever become jaded to that. It's wonderful. And I always feel grateful.
Well, I'm grateful for you writing the book because I had a fantastic time with it. And I also had a fantastic time with you tonight. It was a pleasure. It was a great time. But before we go, I just wanted to hand the floor off to you in terms of telling anybody who's watching this live right now or up until the playback of this video, if you want to direct them to your website, if you want to direct them to your Amazon, any last message from you, the floor is yours.
Well, if you want to find me, I have a website, devoneriksen.com. And I can also easily be found on Twitter. That's where I do the majority of my mouthing off. And that has helped me to convince people that I actually can write. But the lesson that I've taken from all of this is that going from, I need a publisher, I need an agent, to doing this whole thing myself and being successful at it, is that I think that, obviously not everybody can write, but a good writer can come from anywhere. So I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe some of them listening right now, who they think, I can't seem to find an agent. I can't seem to find a publisher. I'm not a pro. I'm just some guy scribbling in his garage, or, maybe doing something else, some other form of art or something else, is that all of these big industries that do these things are not really as competent as you think they are. And you can compete with them, and you can just make something that you think is cool. And it's a big world out there. And other people will probably think it's cool as well if you do. And then if you're good at it enough, and you have to take being good at it enough seriously, you really have to work hard, and you need some talent too. But have a stab at it, because you will be surprised just how many people your craftsmanship might resonate with. It's like I came from nowhere. Nobody knew me. The publishing industry wouldn't give me the time of day. And this is my first novel. It's my debut. And, I'm not getting rich or anything, but I'm paying the mortgage with one book. So it can be done. It can be done. And, despite what I say about not everybody has the talent for it, I would like to encourage people to try, because you don't know if you're good at it until you let somebody else see your work.
Just try to write something cool.
Yeah.
And others might feel that is cool as well.
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm in competition with good writers, because good writers make people want to read more books.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason the market has been shrinking as a whole is completely artificial, and it can be reversed. It's because TradPub isn't doing its job. So if we get on the indie scene and we write some good books and we get them out there, then more people are going to start reading again.
That's my hope. I just know, I was just talking to my wife about this in terms of being a booktuber, in terms of just reading in general is a niche for a lot of people. Not a lot of people read nowadays. You're watching, YouTube, Netflix, movies, and
they're eating potato
science fiction
chips.
and fantasy. That's a niche of a niche almost, to where we're kind of small right now. So I want to broaden it out, get more people to read.
Yeah, well, it's like eating potato chips when you're hungry. This social media stuff, it's these little easily obtainable, easily digested nuggets of entertainment, but it doesn't satisfy. You know, you eat potato chips all day and you never get the feeling that you get from eating a good steak. So, you know, and that's that discoverability problem there is people have to be aware that you have to make them aware that there is a much better time to be had than just doom scrolling Twitter. You know, there are books worth reading, and we all have to put our heads together and figure out how to solve that discoverability problem so that writers who are good at their craft can make a living doing it, and readers who would rather read a good book than Twitter know which books are good.
Mhm. And going back to discoverability real quick, for anyone watching, if you want to discover Devon Eriksen, he also has, I think it's a 3-chapter preview on his website.
Yes, the website has a 3-chapter preview, so you can decide what you think of the writing style and the story and so on.
There we go. And hopefully when you do read it, you don't cringe seeing the word "I," because I'm telling you, there's a story there. And
well,
it's very
you get to decide if you like it or not. You know, one of the functions of marketing that most people don't think about is you don't just want to tell everybody to read your book. You want to find the people who are going to like it and get them interested. But you also want to drive away the people who are going to hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I find that, like, okay, let's put up some sample chapters. Let's write on Twitter so people can see how I write, and then they can decide for themselves. It's not about, you know, convincing everybody to buy the book. It's about finding an audience. You know, one of the things I like to say is that I'm not really in the book selling business. I'm in the audience building business. I'm creating a relationship with people who like what I write.
One cat avatar at a time.
One cat avatar at a time.
Well, thank you again, Devon, for joining me tonight.
Yeah.
And
thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I had a blast. Everyone joining the call here, again, if you have not read it just yet, I highly recommend it. I have a full review as well that you can go check out on the channel afterwards. And thanks again. I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you so much again, Devon. Peace. Boom.